Marisa Shoots says, hi, Marisa. So nice to see Tia. Wayne's World and Nanny.
Oh my goodness. Party on! Party on!
Oh, we got too much music. Oh,
Oh my goodness, let's not start that yet.
Yeah.
Well, Tia, happy CultureCast Day.
Thank you for inviting me. I was just saying this
OMG.
morning that I'm so proud of us. So many people talk about doing things and never get it together.
Right.
You asked me, I said yes, and we started booking the
I
time, and you booked the
immediately
place.
No, right? It's so good. And it's so funny because it's also still May. And I think you know that May is also Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Yes, and I am all that.
You're all that. So we can celebrate you and celebrate all of that and talk about that. But I don't know that I need to introduce you to this audience, right?
I could introduce
Yeah,
me. And
go ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tia Carrere, actress and Grammy Award winning singer.
Amazing.
Many people know me from Wayne's World, True Lies, Rising Sun, most recently Easter Sunday, AJ and the Queen,
I love it.
Relic Hunter, my own TV series, and I'm working right now on Lilo and Stitch live action, a legacy from my animated feature, Lilo and Stitch, 20 years ago.
I love it. I love that
And I'm
it's
still standing.
I love, well, you're still standing because check this. We were just talking about this. Didn't you just fly in a couple hours ago from Hawaii?
I just flew in a couple hours ago from Hawaii. I was saying Marisa that I was supposed to go out on a 2:30 p.m. flight, but for production reasons, couldn't make that flight. So I had to fly overnight to come here and be with y'all. This morning.
My goodness. I love it. And
I'm
you
a little
look
dizzy right now, but I'll do
look
my best.
Fabulous and beautiful per usual. And people
Right back at
I
you.
mean,
Look at us. We put on our best for you today.
can we be sisters or cousins?
We could be.
We could be.
We
Actually, yeah.
we should check our 23andMe.
Actually, we totally should do that. I know Michael's over here like, what? You totally should. So people would ask, wow, Tia Carrere on your CultureCast. I know that for those of you, if you're tuning in for the first time, CultureCast is all around talking to leaders about how they can create environments around themselves where everyone else around them can thrive. So whether it's business or life, etc. And so it's so great when I ran into you, at that party in Hollywood. It's like, you need to do my CultureCast.
Oh my goodness. I listened to your CultureCast and I thought, she's got all these huge leaders at corporations. What do I have to add to this? And I thought, well, there is that common theme of you, wherever you enter, whatever business it is, you can affect the energy in the room. When you're number one on the call sheet, you can set the tone for inclusivity, for being open to people's input. I mean, there are other people that, when they're number one on the call sheet, lead like tyrants and everything's their way or the highway. So I think, even though I'm in a different business realm.
I think the behaviors are consistent. But
Yeah.
before we jump into it, let's talk about young Tia.
Oh, goodness.
Tia growing up before you got into the business. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, in an area called Kalihi, which I always joke it's where Dog the Bounty Hunter did his best work.
Oh,
It was, it was a mostly immigrant area and not the, that fancy Kahala, Hawaii Kai area that you usually see on TV shows. But it taught me that nothing is easily given to you. And I had to catch 2 buses, public buses each way to get to school. It took me an hour to and from school. And
wow.
I was responsible for myself and my little sisters, when we were growing up to get to and from and just be, accountable. And we had a kalamungai tree in the yard, and
Nice.
I said, go pull some kalamungai leaves to make soup. And, it was a great little community that I think informs my work ethic today.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit of a self-winding clock because I learned that young.
Well, I'd love to just jump into AAPI lingo, which is an acronym for Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you identify with AAPI?
It's funny. I was listening to something Pacifica, and they were talking about. I have the same problem when I look at the form of what do you identify as Native American, white, African American, and then there's Asian, and then there's Pacific Islander. And Asian, I always think of as Chinese, Japanese, or even Indian, you know. So I always put Pacific Islander because really the Philippines is the furthest western point of the Pacific.
It totally
So it
is.
is an island in the Pacific. And you know, Micronesia, Melanesia, Polynesia, all of these were colonizer terms. Micro meaning the small islands, you know, Melanesia, the dark-skinned islands. So, I mean, they all have their own individual names like Rangiroa, you know, Tavarua, Papaete, Moorea. So, for us to separate ourselves, I feel like I'm a Pacific Islander, certainly by birth. And, you know, Filipino, Chinese, Latin, you know, Spanish. I mean, there's so much mixture of our bloods.
Totally agree.
I'm every woman. It's all in me. That's what I feel like. I really do. Hawaii is that. We are a melting pot of all these cultures that came together and mixed it up and found their own different little patois language and pidgin English, and we all mixed our foods, and that's what I love so much about Hawaii is a mixture of cultures in a beautiful symphony of diversity. And I wish the whole world was like that.
I do too. I mean, I was born here in Los Angeles. We grew up in East LA, and the first time we ever went to Hawaii, I felt like we were at home. Just because in East LA, there was a good mix of different cultures. But then, I don't know if you got this growing up, people would say, so what are you? Where are you from? Right?
Oh, when I first moved to LA from Hawaii, I had an agent like, oh, why don't you have long hair? You're Asian, you have to have long hair. So I went and bought a long haired wig so I could audition for shows. And I mean, I had, you know, learned my Japanese accent. Well, I knew it from childhood. Japanese accent, Chinese accent, Vietnamese accent, and of course I knew the Filipino accent. And I played all these. I feel like, you know, the Meryl Streep of Asian accents. You know what I mean? She did all these Eastern European accents for her movies. But you know, as long as I represent the truth of the individual, I don't see anything wrong with playing the different accents because it is the truth. We do have different languages and ways of speaking. But I forgot the point of the question. See, this is the dizzy part that I'm still flying over the Pacific to come here.
If you got this, you know, that's what I'm saying about Hawaii. What I love about going to Hawaii is that no matter what your background is,
you're accepted.
You're accepted and you feel included and you feel like home. And I know that when I've gone as an adult, people always walk up to me and ask me about directions and where to go, etc. And even the locals think I'm local, you know.
Until you start talking.
Oh,
you talk mainland. You're not local. I thought you was local. Pigeon.
So let's talk about culture. But before we get into business and work culture, how do you celebrate your multiple heritages, including the Philippines?
I eat my way around my culture. When I go to Hawaii, I could just figure out the signpost of all my favorite restaurants that I like to go to. And it's you know, for my daughter's, she had this AAPI event at her school, and I brought chicken adobo, and pancit bihon, which is the noodles. Chicken adobo, which is, you know, chicken with the soy sauce and garlic and
Bailey's vinegar,
so good, very vinegar friendly. And then I brought the tinikling, which is the bamboo poles. So I love, you know, well, first of all, through the food and through the, you know, the dance to experience all different aspects of all the different Asian cultures. I mean, Daniel Ho and I, my musical partner that I won my 2 Grammys with, and because of him, I won my 2 Grammys. We did a song earlier this year that was up for Grammy, Colors in Harmony. And if you see the video, it's on YouTube, Colors in Harmony. There's taiko drums, there's Taiwanese musicians, there's, you know, us doing Hawaiian. I sang in Filipino and did tinikling on camera. So
no way.
I think if there's a way anybody can go and seek out all the different restaurants and all the different, you know, cultural folk dances, that's a great way to you know, dip your toe in waters and see you know, it unfolds from there, and the costumes, and then dig deeper into the history.
You know, so growing up in LA, we went to culture school every Saturday. So there was culture school for Filipinos, and we would learn how to cook some of the basic dishes. Now, I learned how to cook really with my mom and dad, and then as family came over here to the United States and they began to live with us, we learned how to make lumpia.
Mhm.
You know,
I remember that
chicken
lumpia
adobo,
like line.
right?
You have to separate
Yes.
the wrappers, which ripped very easily,
Right.
and then you have to put the
But it-
julienne beans.
Yeah, actually
Roll it.
preparing all of it too, cooking the food, preparing the vegetables, and then creating that line was kind of crazy. So we learned how to make lumpia and pancit, like some of the basic stuff. Of course, rice, we learned how to do that. And
With
then
the finger.
Yeah.
Yeah, not in a rice cooker.
Right.
You put up to this line on your finger of water above the rice. And then
Right.
you know that it's the perfect amount of
yeah,
water.
and that's how my dad would show us how to make it too. And then we tried to learn how to do the tinigling. That's hard. And if you
It's painful if you
Yeah.
don't get it right.
so if you brought that to your daughter's school, who danced the tinigling?
Oh, they didn't. They
Okay.
didn't. I was ready to do it, but they had other hula dancers and stuff.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh,
Yeah, if anyone wants to know what that is, it's like these two bamboo sticks, and there's two people holding it with a rhythm, and then you're dancing in and out of the
that's like
sticks. pretty much,
10
right?
foot long,
Yeah.
heavy duty, big bamboo stick. Clack, boom,
Yes.
boom, boom, clack. And my parents actually met in a Filipino folk dancing group. That's
No
how they
way.
met. Yeah, Pearl of the Orient, I think it was called.
My dad, when he moved here to the U.S. and he started going to school at 19, he was in some kind of folk dancing group that danced the tinigling.
Tinigling and the Candelaria. You have the candle on your hand that you put it around with both hands. That you can put on your forehead and on your feet sometimes, and then they flip upside down. Crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. So we're talking about the Filipino culture. So let's talk about going into business. So I read about how you were discovered, but so
Yes.
how did you enter the entertainment business?
I was 17 years old. I was in Waikiki at the Waikiki Food Pantry shopping there when a producer's mother and father came up to me and said, "Dawn, you're gorgeous. You should be in my son's movie." And they had just gotten off the plane from LA, so they were all dressed up in their Beverly Hills finest. So it wasn't some sort of like seedy, like
Yeah.
you're thinking they're weird or whatever. Nice couple. And I was like, wait, what, me? I've never done anything like that. And they said, well, the casting director is the one that did Karate Kid. Here's her number, call her, and you can go for an audition. And but you have to look for it. And I was like, okay. So I went and I made pretend
Yeah.
because I had never done any acting before. I was never in like drama school or the drama club or anything. But I had been singing, so I wasn't shy in front of the camera. And got this part in this little movie called Aloha Summer that's gotten more press from my origin story. I should probably get the rights to this movie because
Take notes, somebody. Yeah.
it's crazy. Yeah, Aloha Summer, and got my Screen Actors Guild card and had the female lead in a film and moved to Los Angeles. So it was easy for me to get an agent and get out there and continue working.
So
Just a lucky
did you move at 17, 18 years old to LA?
Yeah, right after I did the movie.
Wow.
I moved here in October of '84, and
Oh my
I graduated in May of '84.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just in time to come out to La La Land.
Well, my parents could afford to send me to college, and
Yeah.
my grades were, B+, A-. That's not enough for a scholarship.
Yeah.
So it was really fortuitous that I, went down this aisle in a grocery store, and these people happened to be in there at that exact moment. It was, I was very blessed. It was a very serendipitous occurrence. I always wondered if I had zigged instead of zagged, how different my life would be.
Yeah, I think it says something about, though, I know opportunity sometimes is lucky, but then you need to be ready for it.
And then also to back it up with a lot of hard work for the next 40 years.
That's right. The fact that you have had this training from singing and that you were not shy at all, I mean, that you had this beautiful voice to begin with and knew how to perform before you knew you were going to be performing as an actress, right?
Yeah.
Acting-wise, right? And so what was it like when you first got to LA?
It was a little terrifying. I remember going to the laundromat over on like Santa Monica Boulevard and Beechwood and hearing gunshots. So it was a little sketchy back then down in that area. And a lot of sharky people that say they would do stuff and didn't, and people that ended up taking more than they gave me, but somehow that work ethic, that I've got no plan B, just kept moving forward.
Yeah.
There was a time when I somebody had taken all my money and I had to live in the hallway of my agent's house.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
after being on a soap opera and modeling and making all this money, and I had $300 in the bank. But no plan B, no going back home. I continued and lived in my agent's hallway for about 6 months until I earned enough money to get first lesson deposit on another single room apartment, not unlike this.
You know, I'm glad you shared that story because I think a lot of people have been there where they've had some success and then for whatever reason,
They trust the
whatever happens
wrong
in life,
people.
yeah, then they're starting from square one again and starting over.
So like big business people that their first company goes bankrupt and they just have to believe that there was something that they analyze it, they figure out what they did wrong and they change the tap, you know.
Yeah, so hard work, what does that look like? So how did you keep fresh, creative throughout this time?
Geez. I guess I just was so young. I mean, I was at 17 when I moved here and far braver than I probably should have been. And I just kept going. And I mean, also I got success early.
Yeah.
So to be the female lead in a film, that's some sort of validation that maybe you know something, maybe you're doing something right. You know, getting cast on a soap opera for a year and a half. Okay, well, you can work and you can sustain yourself over a period of time. So you made the wrong choice in trusting this person. Okay, so let's change that and make sure you follow a different path and you can continue to work. So I just had that self-belief and fortunately I had, you know, validation because I had other people in my acting class that weren't so fortunate and they had to go, okay, you know what, maybe this isn't working for me. I have to find a different revenue stream because LA is not inexpensive to live in.
Oh, totally.
So.
And you know, when I hear you talk about self-belief, this is tangential, but totally related. Did you see that there's a new Muppet on Sesame Street?
Yes, Filipino.
Right.
I love it. I was like, wow. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, his name is TJ. I was reading all about him.
TJ.
So fired up.
His name should have been Bong. Well, that would have been a bridge too far, maybe.
I don't know that people would have fully understood that, but he probably has a nickname, but probably not on camera with Sesame Street. And when you're talking about self-confidence, his debut on Sesame Street was wild in that, not that I watched it, I'm going to go find it. I read about it. And he has a Korean friend, Ji Young, who debuted a couple of years ago, I think in 2021.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the show in a long time, obviously.
Yeah, and they were talking about the word confidence. And I love it. I think in the context of Grover saying that he can hop over how high these trash cans were, but they were talking about confidence and having self-belief, you know, in doing something that you don't think you can be doing, and then inspiring that in others.
Yeah, I mean, especially in show business, well, I don't know. There's no clear path.
Yeah.
It's sort of like even if you enter into a company of a business that you have no prior knowledge of, there seems to be a path of you start here assisting someone, then you become the boss and become a manager, and you work your way up to vice president. In show business, there is no path. It's just you figure it out. You're the only. I'm always making the joke that I'm the crash test dummy of my life, just trying to, by trial and error, just keep going head first into those walls and trying to figure a way around a situation, and that takes a lot of confidence, and it destroys a lot of people because you're the product. When you're an actor, performer, creative person, it's hard not to take it personally. But somehow I have like a bad memory. I forget all the bad stuff that happens, or conveniently so I compartmentalize that, and that's where I think resilience and sort of looking at it as a game, so that it doesn't rock you to your core. I think that's the occupational hazard of what I do and what is particular to this town,
Yeah, I think it's interesting though. You say two things. One is, how do you believe in yourself and first compartmentalize, right? So how do you make sure you stay focused and compartmentalize? But then the other piece is trying not to take it personally. But I think if you're passionate about what you're doing, you should take it personally. Right?
It's hard, but that's the stuff that breaks you. I mean, from Daniel Day-Lewis saying, I'm not going to be an actor anymore. This is too hard for me. For him, it's like the internal mechanism of acting that part.
Yeah.
And the part of him that just, because he goes to the nth degree to create a character. But I mean, look at people like, I don't know, any number of starlets that have mental problems or drug or alcohol things because they're trying to hype themselves up to go back out there to be told no for this 1000th time and to think, what's wrong with me? I'm no longer pretty enough. I'm no longer young enough. I'm no longer the child actor, performer. You have to be able to, on some level, see it as a game.
I hear you.
And
Okay.
and step back. And I know because I've been in the casting room on the other side when I was involved with a film company, and I would be privy to the castings, and I see people coming in, I see how nervous they were, and the reason why they weren't chosen had nothing to do with them or anything they did. They just didn't fit the type of the other actor that's already cast, or they were taller than them, they were too short, whatever. There was no chemistry between the two leads. And I guess maybe seeing that made me take it less personally. And Clive Owen came up with a great take on it. He said, I don't see auditions as a negative thing. I see it as maybe that's going to be the only time I get to play this character. So I'm going to have fun with it.
Yeah.
You have to create a playfulness and take that heaviness of, they don't want me, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
You just do you, and sometimes it dovetails with the greater vision of the project, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, I love though, yes, you just do you because that's who you are, and you just never know. I think sometimes people, from a business standpoint, feel like, oh, we're trying to hire for this. I hear you. And there's specific experiences required, right, for a role. What I'm hearing you talk about is, and on top of that, there's probably a certain look, a certain whatever, right, for whatever role that you're trying to audition for. And I think people go into this, and when they lose themselves and they try so hard, I'm going to remember everything about this experience. And I mean, I've seen it as an interview.
I'm going to try to be more like that actor or actress. You can't be them. Be you.
Yeah.
And I've gone into the room, and for AJ and the Queen, my RuPaul TV series on Netflix, I went in, and when I played the role, Michael Patrick King, who did Sex and the City, he goes, I had never envisioned the part like how you played it, Tia, but I love what you brought to this, because it was something that surprised him. He had written something thinking it was this, but when I brought myself to it, it became greater. So that's where, if you trust yourself, you can elevate, the experience for even the person that started out thinking that it was going to be this little, this particular thing. And you inject your humanity, your personal experience, your heritage, your power, and your mana, your everything, and then it becomes something greater than what was originally even written or intended.
I love that. I actually had a former boss who became a mentor. His name is Dan Ginsberg. He at once was the CEO of Red Bull North America. I'd gone on to a different job, and it was hard. It was hard being a female, being at the top human resources role, working with a bunch of men.
Very testosterone business.
Totally.
Red Bull,
right. Well, I moved on to another role, and I got a lot of shade. I'll just say shade in that, oh, well, are you married? How many children do you have? What church do you go to? Like very stereotypical down the middle of the country, right? And I'm working with all these males. And then all of a sudden, we did this thing called 360 feedback, where you get feedback on leadership behavior. And then there's kind of open-ended answers. And someone wrote in like, well, did you see what Marisa was wearing? She wore that to the office. And I'm thinking, okay, I would
never do that to a guy.
Well, A, never to a guy. But then B, it's not like I'm inappropriate going to a club, going to the office. And so I remember talking to my boss, who was a CEO at that company at the time. And he is just like, Marisa, you just got to let it shake, right? Like, don't let them phase you. But the fact that I'm hearing this from other peers who are complaining about what I'm wearing as an example. And so I was talking to Dan.
Your feelings, because in that moment you're like, it's me.
It's totally me, and I think when I got the feedback, well, maybe you can tone down a little bit what you're wearing. So when I go down, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know I can do this job. That's why they hired me.
Clearly you took their, you toned down. Yeah, I can see that they were really, exactly. You do you.
You do you,
and you're perfect just the way you are.
Yeah, and I think the saying that sticks with me for Dan is, he's like, Marisa, you can do this job. He said, you have experience, you have chops, but you can't forget the beauty of your talent is who you are. Mm-hmm. It's not all these other things. So I love that you're sharing that story.
Yeah, it took a lot of years of therapy, a lot of, looking back and analyzing, where things went wrong or where, because there was a time where I was really overwhelmed. I was in, two of the biggest movies in the world, Wayne's World,
Yeah.
True Lies, and it became very overwhelming. And I was flying a different city every, and there's some weird sound.
Yeah, we're up on Sunset Boulevard, and I think there's a construction going on. And,
Okay, as long as it's not the system that's
it's not us. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
No,
If you can't
it's
do
not.
that at home, it's the voices in my head that are
No,
talking.
it's this beeping sound like either the French fries are ready or someone's backing up. Right.
That's what it is.
It's a dump
Okay.
truck.
All right, so it's not me losing my mind. Like, wait, what's going on? It was a very. I mean, this trip to this place today, 40 years later, was not without adversity. A lot of twists and turns and disappointments and basically homelessness, as you heard earlier.
Right.
But you have to work on the foundational skills. And for me, that was going back to analysis.
Yeah.
And, 5 days a week at a certain point, then 3 days a week, then once a week. And then just like, okay, I'm in a place where I'm not this tangled up ball of rubber bands
Yeah.
of different colors and sizes and shape. I could put them in where they came from. And when things well up, I go, okay, that's why that happens, is because it triggers this in me. Okay, that's why that's making me feel insecure in this moment. That's all right. I know where it comes from. So I think ownership of who you are, where you came from, we're imperfect beings, and in a difficult business and a difficult world sometimes. I worry for my daughter and their generation because their little brains aren't fully formed and they're looking at images and scrolling through stories that are trying to inject fraudulent information into their brains. So
Totally.
I don't know what to do.
Well, it's interesting,
forward, but-
that you bring that up because it's this next gen, right? This next generation that's coming up in the world that is the most anxious. And if you
And they're not as tied to their culture either, which leaves
Right.
them adrift, I think,
That's
a
right.
lot. And that's why we're seeing, this is my theory, why we're seeing a lot of tattooing and piercings and stuff. There's that lack of connection to your heritage and your culture. So they're trying to create culture for themselves. I'm the tattoo pierced counterculture. I, identify with you. I'm not my, I don't know, right wing parent or whatever. And it's a hunger for that. And I wish we could figure out a way, even though I was born and raised in Hawaii, my daughter is of here.
Yeah.
And I feel sad about that, but I don't know how to remedy that situation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to know.
I think it's everything that you talked about, though. I think at some point, these young people coming up who are going to go into entertainment or go into the business world, and again, May is also Mental Health Awareness Month. So when you talk about, I'm going to use the word self-awareness and really take the inventory of what's going on with you, and you also use the word resilience. To me, I think resilience is really having a clue about what's going on with you, like who you are, what you believe, what you stand for, and then understanding when the world throws just crazy stuff at you, you have control over how you choose to react.
That's
Right?
the only thing you have control over.
Yeah.
You have no control over the bad stuff that happens, but you can control how you let it rock you, how you let it wash over you.
Right.
How you maybe it knocks you back for a second, but you bounce back up and find your center again.
Yeah.
For any
So
business.
that's a good tip for those thinking about how do I keep my mental fitness going on as I find my way in the world. But
Get help if you need it.
oh,
Yeah,
totally.
it's a tough time now, I think, especially after COVID. It was a reset for people, but it also brought up a lot of difficult things. Maybe it was underneath and they were handling it, but after that, it really kind of set them on the back foot. And I think the most important thing is that we don't stigmatize it. And if you do need help, talk to somebody.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, while I will say the word silver lining from a business context, if anything, COVID taught large businesses that you have human beings at the center. Creating the product, delivering the services so that companies can make money. And there's one terminology that I have been so nerding out over, and it's this whole notion of the emotional laborer. So
totally old school, goes back to 1983. And it was the terminology for hourly workers, where part of their job and their professional task is to mask their emotions, right? So you think about the front line, right?
Right.
And so I think it's super relevant today, whether or not you're a frontline worker. And if you're a leader, understanding coming back from COVID, it's over, but it did bring up all these
Anxieties
emotions,
and
anxiety.
fears
Yes.
and phobias.
Yeah. And it presents
Aggression.
a new challenge for leaders and how they can ensure that, hey, it's a thriving, productive workplace. So it's interesting you bring all of that up. But you also did bring up, we have to talk about Wayne's World. So tell me about how that ended up happening. Like,
That was quite something, because at that time I was a hair's breadth away from being cast on Baywatch. And
oh, geez.
I know, a very divergent path. It was one of those forks in the road where you could go left, you could go right. And I was very far along with Baywatch, and it was to play the marine biologist girlfriend of Hasselhoff and blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And there was only one more thing, which was a swimming test or something. And I kept dragging my feet with my agent. I said, they sent me the script for Wayne's World, and I read it and I was like, this is the part.
Yes.
I cannot picture. I was so certain in my heart of hearts, like there was nobody else that can play this part but me, singing, acting, kicking butt, the martial
Yeah.
arts and stuff. And that's everything that I'd done up until that point. And the heavy Cantonese accent that
Oh, yeah.
sings like Pat Benatar.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anybody else that could play it. And I was so certain. I said, I want to go in for this. Let's get further along,
Yeah.
drag your feet with the Baywatch negotiations and all that kind of stuff. And I could have lost both, but it was a gamble that paid off. I remember getting that call. You got it. I was like, yes,
Oh, my
jumping up and
goodness.
down. But I don't know why. I had this really deep belief that part was for me. It will be mine.
Amazing.
Oh, yes, it will be mine.
So what was the audition like? Did you have to read with Mike Meyer? Was there?
No.
Oh, okay.
I went over to Paramount, and there were like a handful of girls that I'd seen at a number of other auditions, and just went in and did the scene. And they said, "Can you sing?" It's not necessary. And it's like, then I started singing, "Heartbreaker, dream maker, love taker, don't you mess around with me." And like, "Oh yeah, yeah." I said, I sang with a rock band when I was in junior high and entered talent contests. That's where my singing experience paid off. And first audition, then second audition, and I think like the third audition, it was the final callback, and I saw some of those same girls again. And Mike Myers was there, and he came out. And he goes, "You're my choice. You're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing." And I was like, that was the
Amazing.
wind in my sails that
Yes.
just pushed me forward and just made me trust in myself.
Yeah.
In that moment, all that doubt and negativity. Oh, I'm not as skinny as her. I'm not as pretty as her. I'm not as known as her, whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's kind of brutal when you're sitting in a room and you're looking at everybody that you're up against. It's just crazy. That's the upside of doing remote auditions now. But just him telling me that was all the difference in the world. And I got it. And it was
so
a movie that
awesome.
changed my life.
Well, it's interesting you talk about like, I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that. It sounds like a lot of women, especially that I mentor, around this whole thing around imposter syndrome, right? They're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not going to get this job. But I love your advice of, hey, look, believe in yourself, right? And I think too, there's a notion of when it's right, the chemistry's right? The energy's there. Right.
And in making of a movie, particularly, it's like you're making a great big stew. And the difference between two people in the room could be between paprika and cumin. Yeah. What do they want in their stew today? Do you know the difference between paprika, cumin, or whatever? It's so minuscule. So all you can do is bring yourself, your fullest, most realized self, and be daring and be bold and be individualistic, and don't try to be anybody else but you.
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's just great advice for anybody in life and how they navigate.
It served me well. I mean,
yes,
that's my North Star.
And then did that lead you to True Lies, or did you have to audition for that? Like,
I had to, every single thing that I've ever wanted that has been great. I've had to audition for. The one thing I didn't get was I auditioned for Heat, and I really wanted
Yeah.
that role. I mean, Pacino and De Niro, are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
And at least I know that I gave a killer audition. I just wasn't, what the vision that they had for it. But the casting director was like, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I felt really good. It was a very emotional scene. And so I had to go in. I flew to Miami and stayed in a hotel room, I think for 24 hours, like walking back and forth, going over and over the lines for True Lies. It was a monologue. And then I finally went in and auditioned for Jim Cameron and got that role. And it was perfect, juxtaposed with what I did in Wayne's World to what I did in True Lies. For an actor, you want to create that, I can do this, but I can
Yes.
also do that. They were so far removed
It's so great.
in genres and characters, and it was such a gift to be
Yeah.
able to play both of those roles. And I can't believe the stuff that I've been able to do.
Well, I think you actually demonstrated in mainstream, like to everybody, kind of the diversity of experience and character that you can play. And I just remember when Wayne's World came out and then that movie came out and we went to go see that too. Look, I mean, you are an idol. I think about there's someone who looks like me who is actually a star, right? Like an actress out there on the big screen. That is unusual. It's unusual.
I'm very grateful, and it humbles me to think that there's a generation of actresses out there who call themselves actors. They don't even have to define themselves as actresses anymore because they're in a different time. And that I somehow squeaked that door a little bit more open for people that look like me. And when I meet them at these, appearances, and they say, I didn't think it was possible before I saw you on screen that I could actually be there at the table. And that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I think you are a pioneer. You've kind of paved the way for others who may not have your heritage, but they are, different, and just creating that, again, opening up that door and, making that happen for other people and inspiring confidence and belief in themselves to do it.
Yeah, I've been really, really fortunate. And I love all the different ethnicities that I've been able to play, and all the different types of characters. And to speak to that, right now, there's kind of this troubling trend that I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like corporations that are worried about authenticity. Okay,
Yeah.
first I'm an actress.
Yeah.
And I played Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, mixed race. And now I'm seeing on audition things, you have to be of actual Tongan, Fijian, Samoan blood. And I find that very exclusionary. It's very hard to say. I've seen a lot of specificity, like when Native American, you have to have Native American blood and prove it, or Hawaiian blood. And they don't ask Australian actors, why are you playing an American? They don't ask English actors, why are you playing American? They don't ask Americans, why are you playing an Irish character or an Italian person playing a Mexican character? Why do you have to dissect it down and be so reductive? I don't understand where it came from. I don't know if it's like a small group of particular, performers, or if it's the corporations that are being so ultra careful, but it makes it harder for someone like me to continue to work, because when I'm going to have to only play, Filipino, Spanish, Chinese, Hawaiian characters. How often is that going to come up unless I write it myself?
Right.
So it's kind of this weird place right now where I'm a little confused how to negotiate these waters, because I think if we're all sort of mixed and of the Pacific Islands, I mean, I don't know why it has to be so exclusionary like that, because I don't see that in the white or Caucasian roles.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I
It's
didn't
weird,
know
right?
that. I
Isn't
think
that
it's weird because, to your point, there could be a white person coming in and auditioning for an Irish or a Scottish, whatever, but they don't need to prove that, right?
Yeah,
Do we now need to walk around with our 23andMe?
Yeah.
Is that what the deal is?
That's the thing that I'm having a little hard time with, because there's some roles that I'm looking at and I'm saying, hey, I'd like to go in for this, and this is what I'm getting back. So that's an interesting it's like the pendulum swung so far in the
how-
other direction.
How are they
now.
explaining
It's
that?
not
though?
like, you know, white people playing yellow
Yeah.
face
Yeah,
or
yeah,
putting
yeah.
on blackface.
Yeah.
That, yes, clearly offensive. That's wrong. But if you're mixed race, Polynesian, you know, a Pacific Islander, why can a Hawaiian person not play a, you know, Tongan person?
Yeah.
Why could a Filipino person not play a Fijian person? I mean, we have Maori from New Zealand that are playing Hawaiian in
Yeah.
films, and you know, there's precious little for us to begin with.
Yeah.
So this is the hard next step in what I'm seeing in the marketplace for someone like me to continue moving forward.
Wow, that is surprising to hear that. It's almost like it went backwards. Just, you know, a little bit if they're getting really specific around, oh, you need to prove your
It's
heritage
blood.
and your
Yeah.
blood. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just talking to another actor that was facing that with the same thing. And I'm like, we're both from Hawaii.
Yeah.
And what was going on? Why are we not, you know? So it's a little hard. So if you're watching, help us out there.
Right. You know, it makes me think about
We'll figure it out. We're
Yeah.
resilient. We'll figure out a way around
Yes.
this one.
it just I think there's a lesson learned here though. It sounds like it's gone a step too far. I just don't know the
Mhm.
ins and outs of why specifically the bloodline needs to be
Mhm.
proven. But I think about you know, the role of diversity in corporate America, right? So here's the good news. The good news is, like, let's talk about your daughter. This next generation coming into this workplace is the most diverse, right? Like
Mm.
you think about backgrounds, it's a mix, like it's beautiful. And I think the opportunity now, although with the behaviors for diversity as you move up in the organization, it's more around how do you include people, right? How do you create environments where they feel like they can be themselves and they can thrive and be productive? And so when I hear you tell that story around, well, you've got to have like the specific blood.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me.
It doesn't to me. I mean, yes, I realize you're trying to protect it so that actual Polynesian people can get the jobs, but we are in the area, we are Pacific Islanders, we are all of the same ilk. So then why are you going to divvy it up so much so that it makes it difficult for actors to act and that have that culture in their hearts and have grown up in
Yeah.
the culture, and we're all very, it's minuscule, the differences in our cultures. So
Well, I'd love to talk about culture more broadly in the entertainment industry. Like how would you describe it? Like what is it like working in the entertainment industry?
geez, I mean, I think it's changed a great deal since
Okay.
I started out 40 long years ago. I almost made you spit
Sound
up.
like water.
Oh, that would have been hilarious. Spit take.
Right.
I mean, it's funny. It's like, oh my gosh, you don't have to date yourself. I'm like, it's just the truth. I mean, you can look it up on Google. It's just all that. My filmography speaks the truth. It's I remember. I mean, not just as a culture, like ethnicity and heritage. Being a female
Yeah.
in Hollywood was fraught, and there was no HR that you could go to and say, I'm getting harassed by this guy on set. You just had to go, oh, stop it, and just elbow him or punch him in the shoulder. You're like, treat him
Yeah.
like a naughty uncle, and oh, you're so blah, 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 you know, and sort of tap dance around really, really sketchy situations that today you would not cross that line with somebody. So it was a double threat really when
Yeah.
it came to Hollywood as a 17-year-old. So it was very, very confusing and difficult trying to be self-protective and still strive forward and believe that you can, you know, get there even with everything that you're facing. I think today there are a lot more roles where you see accepting all submissions of all ethnicities.
Oh, okay.
That I did not see until probably 10, 15 years ago.
Really?
So, I mean, I've been here for 40 years. I didn't see it until like 15 years ago. That's a great stride forward. And when I've gone into the room, the final calls for things, and I'll see, you know, African American, Asian, you know, East Indian, occasional blonde or, you know,
Amazing.
American
Yeah.
looking. Yeah. So that's pretty cool that we're up against each other for our essence rather than
Yes.
our external packaging.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's a win for all of us.
I think that just so translates in the business world too. You know, I think especially in the last 5 years, 10 years, large companies have been more intentional about ensuring that there was equity in terms of representation, whether it's gender, male or female.
Well, look at
Um,
you. I mean, you're everything, in corporate America also,
Well,
we're,
thanks.
yeah, we are the same.
We are the
in
same.
different worlds. We are the same.
It's like
We could
holding
be
a mirror.
cousins.
We are cousins. But yeah, I think it's more so now, though, where companies are now being intentional about understanding that broader pipeline of talent that is out there.
Mhm.
Instead of, I don't know if it's like this in entertainment. Oh, and they know that person. They're going to get the job, right? Oh, I know that person. I'm going to hire that person. Versus like, let's understand who's out there, who actually has the skills and experiences, and give them the chance to interview for the role, right? Instead of
Yeah.
just having that close network. And I think that's what diversity and inclusion is all about. But then I hear you too as a female. I mean, in business, growing up, I think it's maybe generationally too, before human resources actually had a real role when it was
To protect people
to protect
and to
people.
hold them others accountable for their bad actions.
Absolutely. No, because I remember being young and learning in my career. And, when you're young and wide-eyed and, trying to learn from everybody. And then I remember this one guy, this was one of my first jobs. He would stalk me in the lunchroom. Like he'd find me in the lunchroom. Oh, what are you having today? Like something weird like that, right? And we weren't even in the same department. I think he was in marketing or finance.
Mm.
And then it went to follow me back to my office where I sat. And then I thought, this is really weird. And then
Standing
he
in the
goes,
doorway,
Yeah.
blocking your exits.
a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, well, maybe we can meet up for drinks after work. I'm like, no, that's okay. And then I remember him just continuing on with, maybe we can have breakfast together. And then I'm like, maybe you need to meet my manager, who was actually right behind him, walking into the office behind me. And I was HR, right? So who do I go to? I went to my manager and said, what's your name again? I'm going to make his name Luke. Luke, this is my manager. Why don't you ask him to breakfast? And it was like one of those where you had to
Oh,
fend for
nice.
yourself.
You
Yeah.
said it like that.
Oh,
Good
for sure.
you.
Yeah.
And what did
Yeah.
your boss do? How did your boss back you up?
His name was Cliff Tipton. I loved him because he was always happy-go-lucky, always very positive. And he goes, hey, Luke, so how do you know Marisa? Like, do you guys work together? Like, are you working on a project together? And then he's like, well, you probably have no business being here then. Like that's the way he
Nice.
handled it.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
Oh, that's really, I like that.
Yeah, I agree with you though. Now the role is, how do you make sure that people feel like they can be themselves and thrive? And the role that human resources and people experience play is helping to create a culture really through leaders. Like leaders own that. It's not HR is going to go police it, right? Leaders have to behave well.
Well, like I said, number one on the call sheet sets the tone for the set.
That's right.
And if you're enthusiastic and you welcome people's input and they feel that they can bring things to you, there's a conversation, there's an energy, there's a synergy. And if you lead by, attrition and I'm the ruler here and you all are in my fiefdom, then it's going to be different. And so I think it's for the, corporate leaders out there to really listen to people and see where they're having difficulties and backing them up.
Yeah.
And being firm in supporting them.
I agree with you. I think about, and I say this all the time, I think culture is not just what companies espouse their purpose and their values are, but it's a reflection of leadership behavior.
Yeah, it's not
Right?
this airy-fairy sort
No.
of like inspirational poster on
Yeah.
the wall. It's every day. How do you handle different situations that come up? And that creates, each little instance creates the culture.
Oh my gosh, you're right. And it's how leaders behave, because they're going to model the behavior that's acceptable or not acceptable, right?
Mhm.
Inside an organization. So not unlike the first one on the call sheet, kind of setting the tone. I think that's cool. Well, what advice would you give anyone who's listening in to create a very healthy culture where they can set the tone?
Boy, far be it from me to ever preach or I see these life coaches online. I just shake my head. I'm like, as evolved and as much work as I think I've done, I would have a hard time telling people these are the 3 ways you can attain happiness in your life. This is the 7-step path towards finding true love. It's never as reductive and simplistic as that. So I would just say, you listen to that wee small voice in you, and if you sit quietly and you're really honest with yourself, do the work so you can get to the place where you're truly honest with yourself. Surround yourself with people that can be truly honest with you, and listen to that part of you that knows instinctively what's right and what's wrong for you,
That's right. Oh my gosh, that's such
and stand
yeah,
by it and protect it.
that's really good advice. You know,
It's
I
simple. To thine own self be true,
yes, and I think it's not so much in the head, but what you're talking about is like in the heart and the gut. You know, when you get real clarity around who you are and what you're about, honor where you came from. I mean, it's everything that you've said, and listen to that voice. You know, especially when there is a pathway where you need to choose. Sometimes it is that looking
Yeah, you
internally.
close your eyes and you take a
Yes.
deep breath and you calm yourself, and I think this is where my heritage and culture informs that. Is I just think of all the shoulders that I stand on. My grandmother, her parents, and they came over on a ship. They pulled together. They worked on a plantation, backbreaking work, and I'm here, a movie star in Hollywood. I am so grateful, and I have to do my best to be the best person that I can be, to do the best job I can, and that is the legacy of where I came
Yes.
from. And just gives me chills just thinking about, like, I think about my grandma. I'm like,
Oh.
oh.
Yeah, it reminds me too of family because my mom and dad immigrated here from the
Oh,
Philippines.
wow.
Yeah, my dad was 19. My mom came by much later. She was a nurse. My dad's older than my mom. And we had no family. So it was just my mom and dad, and then his sister, who he followed. And over time, my mom would bring one sister, and the next one, she had three sisters and a brother from the Philippines. They would leave their families to come and, pursue the American dream in the land of
Wow.
opportunity. And I remember this because everyone lived with us, when they all came over,
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
watching them, when you're talking about your heritage, watching my direct relatives come in and try and make their way
From the ground
yeah,
up.
from the ground up, because they could have been teachers, they could have been nurses, but they had to prove their way here. And what I saw, whether it was my aunts or my cousins who came over, and like they eventually all came over, my mom's sisters, they had to start like an hourly minimum wage,
Mhm.
fast food, retail. And
Yeah.
I'm
I
so
remember my
proud
Uncle Edwin coming in and
Yeah.
staying with us, working at Popeyes.
right?
Bonus, we get Popeyes at home all the time.
Yeah, no, my cousin worked at Carl's Jr. And then I have another cousin who worked at KFC. And it was amazing kind of see them just pick up and then make their way up. And so I agree with
Save the
you.
money, get
Yes.
their apartment, just
Move out,
work
get your own
hard and
place.
build your
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
It can be done. That's the great thing about being in America is, we can build great and mighty things.
Yeah,
here. And there's no hierarchy. There's no class system that keeps you down. Yes, there's economic class system, but there are ways that we can utilize some of these tools and,
Yeah.
master this capitalism system.
Well, I wish that people can see kind of the behind the scenes when we were getting ready to do all of this. And here's a couple of words, and I would love for you to react, that you remind me of, like you just kind of espouse. One is resourcefulness. Like, where does that come from?
Oh gosh. I keep saying my grandma,
Yeah.
but I mean, when they were growing up, they didn't have money. So, but they would buy a lot of rice. So they made clothing from rice bags.
Oh, wow.
There was nothing that went to waste. And my grandma worked as a librarian at Pearl Harbor for 50 years, and she saw a lot of paper waste. So she would take the spare paper and put gum at one end and make huge bundles of scrap paper that we would use at home for homework or for notes next to the phone. And, scraps would become, a soup or whatever. It
Yeah.
just, you can make something wonderful out of anything. I think that's a great superpower to have.
That's awesome.
In the event of a zombie apocalypse, I'm set.
Right. So on the way in, we were trying to fix the mic stand because the mic kept falling. And
Oh yeah.
I'm like, oh, there you go, MacGyvering it. Where's the butter knife? Like, you figure that out.
We need a butter knife. That's all we need.
Right. That's all we needed. Come on. And then the other word too is grace. So
Grace.
as you talk about your experience, how did you form that? Because I think that's also a great skill to have in the business world.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I don't know exactly what you mean by grace. Grace under fire, like
Yeah.
somehow keeping my composure
That's
and
right.
kindness, and I think that stems from empathy because I always when I see somebody, even if they're a terrible, angry person at that moment, I just wonder what happened before, or where
Yeah.
maybe something bad happened to them. Maybe I'm curious. I'm always constantly curious about the human condition, and I love talking to strangers and learning things about them. And so I have this great empathy for all different kinds of people, and that gives me, the perspective of being kind when you meet someone.
Yeah. No, I think I relate to you on that. I feel like in my upbringing, I've been observing human behavior for as long as I can remember. And I guess it's not a
It really
surprise.
serves you in your
No,
your
right.
business. 100%.
Not a surprise ending up in a career in people,
Mhm.
in human resources.
I
And
love people, don't
yeah,
you?
I do too.
I love
I
learning
feel
about
like,
people, all different kinds of people.
yeah, I really do feel like this is kind of like opposite mirror day because there's so many parallels in our background, but in different industries, which is wild.
Mm.
Really wild. Well, if you were to give one more piece of advice to anyone listening on how to pay it forward to others, you're talking about, being kind. How do you take this gift and this experience that you've had and help pay it forward to others?
I know in a number of instances when people come up to me and they say, "Oh, I want to do what you do, but I don't know if I can do it." Take the time to speak to them. Like I'll spend 20 minutes at a front desk of a hotel and talk to somebody about their hopes and dreams and sort of suss it out for them and say, well, if that's all you ever see yourself doing, and you owe it to yourself to unwrap this and try it,
Yeah.
to the best of your ability. Try it, give yourself a timeline. And, it's usually like, should I follow my dream with stars in my eyes, or should I continue with my, job that gets me money, and that sort of thing? Or because I look like you, I wonder if I could get into this business. So I would say, take the time to listen and to give people your true input, whatever they come to you with, because that's the best thing you could share with someone is your time.
I love that. I think it's such great advice for leaders and for anyone who wants to be a leader.
Listen.
Yeah, it's to listen. It's being present for someone. And I love that if you run into someone at the hotel front desk and they're really curious, but taking the time to be present and to listen to them, because I know what I've heard from employees, especially throughout the pandemic, is the most important thing is they wanted to be seen and heard, right?
Yep.
And
And you get that back in, so much if you just say, I see you, I appreciate what
Totally.
you're doing. You're doing such a great job. That person will go to the ends of the earth to do their best for you.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned to you on the way in when we were walking over here that there's a bunch of Krispy Kremers watching this, right? So here
Big
they
fan
are.
of your work, Krispy Kreme.
Right.
I might be a repeat offender over at your the store closest to this location.
Not so much an offender, though. Is it offensive to eat donuts? Come on, I love them. Yeah, but I think the whole notion of Krispy Kreme, they have
For an
awesome,
actress,
yeah.
it could be very dangerous.
Well,
That's all
could
I'm
be.
saying.
It's a once in a while treat that you could share with others,
Oh
right?
yes, I love Krispy Kreme.
Right. Right.
I love it with every fiber of my being.
Well, one thing you need to know about Krispy Kreme, I've gotten to know the leadership team there and the CEO, Mike Tattersfield.
Hi.
I love the way he rolls in terms of being a leader when he is present for others and he gets out there and he's in all of the donut shops talking to everybody who works at Krispy Kreme, and he's always talking to people about their dreams and their goals.
He should do the Undercover Boss show.
Oh,
wouldn't that be fun?
I don't know. We should ask.
Undercover Boss, where
Okay.
they go to the different stores and they put on a wig and a.
I think it'd be hard to disguise him though because everyone knows him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Too
Yeah.
recognizable.
Right. So I think that's another great example of leadership when you talk about being present, seeing and hearing people, also asking them what they're dreaming about. Sounds like that's what you're saying. And
Yeah.
that's where we're giving a shout out to our Krispy Kremers for doing that. I love it.
Yay.
Yeah. And so, well, we're going to wrap up because we've got plans after this.
Ooh, we are.
Yeah, but I just want to thank you, Tia, for being authentically you, not only in this conversation, but as a role model throughout your epic career over the decades, paving the way for others and actually
Goodness, thank you.
sharing ideas on how people can create cultures for themselves, be successful for themselves and create success for others. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh my gosh,
here.
so good to see you. We're going to wave everyone goodbye and we're going to play our outro music. Michael.
Mahalo. Salamat. Mahalo.
Salamat po.
Thank you. He's getting so many times.
Should we try and dance out?
Arigato. I'm making myself dizzy.
Get some donuts. I know. Maybe eat and then get donuts, right?
Dessert.
Yeah. Shout out to Julius again, too.
If I wasn't tethered, I'd be up dancing.
Next time. Can we do a karaoke CultureCast next time?
Oh my gosh.
I'm so down for that. That would be amazing.
I got my song. I know my song.
Oh my goodness.
You'll have to hear it.